It's good to be here with all of you this morning. Again, I just want to reiterate what Duncan already said. We welcome our guests who are with us. We're so glad you're here to be among us, to join us. Maybe because this is Mother's Day, you're here with a mom or a grandmother, or maybe you're a mom here with your kids. And so we're delighted that you're here. We've already pointed this out, but I just want to speak a little to it. Mother's Day it's a good day, but it's a complicating day, isn't it? Because for some of us, we miss our moms. And they have a special place in our hearts. For others of us, I think about my wife right now and all her work, and I know there's lots of moms out there who are doing so much for their kiddos. And then I'm also thinking, though it's complicated, I'm thinking about my own mom who's fighting for her life with stage 4 cancer. So it's a good day. It's a blessing day, but it doesn't mean that it's not difficult for some of us. And I want to just read this piece of scripture to you as a blessing of Mother's Day. It comes from Hosea 11, and God is depicted as mother. And this is a beautiful, beautiful piece of scripture. When Israel was a child, I loved him, and out of Egypt I called my son. But the more they were called, the more they went away from me. They sacrificed to the Baals, and they burned incense to images. It was I who taught Ephraim to walk, taking them by the arms, but they did not realize it was I who healed them. I led them with cords of human kindness, with ties of love. To them I was like one who lifts a little child to the cheek, and I bent down to feed them. Thanks, moms. David is in the wilderness, and in Scripture, if you ever know about wilderness in Scripture, it's kind of an interesting season for either the person or for the community of God's people. You look at Moses and God's people on their way to Mount Sinai. You look at Jesus in the wilderness, and there's other images as well. But this wilderness, this idea of wilderness, is a season of trial, of struggle, of trying to identify with who you are. And so David, right now in this series of passages from about 1 Timothy chapter 21 up until Saul's death of chapter 31, we're right in 25 today, David is in this, what they call the wilderness years. It's kind of a cool story in some ways how David's depicted. He's depicted as this kind of outlaw good Samaritan. He's like Robin Hood. So that's pretty cool. So he travels the countryside doing good works, yet the law is after to get him because obviously Saul is out to kill him, Philistines, a bunch of other people. And he's kind of an outlaw. He's kind of he's with a ragtag group of people, and they're just kind of doing their thing. And so there was even times in this wilderness season where he runs into Saul. He could sneak up on him and kill him, but he chooses not to. In fact, that's one of the stories that you see in the chapter right before, in chapter 24. So we're in chapter 25. Saul, once again, is on a journey, and he runs into two key people in the story. And this is who we're going to focus on. Abigail and Nabal. Okay? You're going to learn some Hebrew this morning. So this is the Hebrew word Nabal. So I say Nabal. Okay? That means foolish. So I had a choice this morning to either title my sermon Wise Woman or Foolish Man. You're welcome, dads. Nabal is foolish. Abigail is not. Her name means it's the joy of father. She's like the pride and joy of her family. She is beautiful, is how the text describes it. And not just like some attractional beauty, but this beauty that resides in the heart. You see true beauty within her, and she's very wise, intelligent, smart beyond her years. And so this is the two characters that David will be introduced to. Nabal is a rich shepherd. He is, in the time of his life, at this particular moment, it's sheep shearing season, which means it's like the harvest season for shepherds. So they're getting all the cotton ready, and as most festivals in Scripture, when harvest happens, there are some good things happening. There's parties, there's festivities, there's happiness, there's joy, there's giving, and that's what you do. That's the season you're in. And so it would make sense that David would be invited and participate in this season of festivities and joy. He's well known in the region. He himself is a shepherd. So it makes good sense, for David to send one of his own guys to head up to Nabal and say, hey, I'd like to come to your party. And Nabal says no. Not only does he say no, but he actually describes a way where he says, I don't even know these guys. Where do these guys come from anyways? Which is offensive. It's rude. Because Nabal does know who these guys are. He knows exactly who David is. So why does Scripture name Nabal foolish? I don't know if fool's the right word or not, right? Because in Scripture, it seems like he's more of a jerk, he's mean, he's surly, but foolish? And that's what I want to spend some time on. I want to talk about biblical foolishness. Proverbs chapter 12, 15, and 16 says, fools think their own way is right, but the wise listen to advice. Fools show their anger at once, but the prudent ignore an insult. So in biblical foolishness is someone who's full of their ego. They're defensive. They have to be right all the time. Their success is built upon being always right. I remember when I was a little kid and Janice Smith, nephew Scott Morgan, I might have shared the story with you, but I got in so much trouble once because I took lighter fluid and some old toys. Not a bad idea. This would be a good way to get rid of them. And when I was young, we burned them. Me and Scott Morgan did out in the backyard. And apparently, melting rubber is a very distinct smell. And so my mom crews up right behind us, and we knew immediately that we were in trouble. And my mom said, how foolish of an act. Why would you do that? Right? And so for us, foolishness is more, maybe you do a dumb act, you made a dumb decision, surely you could be smarter than that. But biblical foolishness is wrapped up in something different, and I would even say more dangerous than a child burning toys in the backyard. Because this person, well, they ignore God. They have it all figured out. And you want to know what? Today in our society, you know what people out there and in media and everywhere, you know what they're calling these people? They're calling them people of strength, of leadership. Just because they stand up for themselves and are always right no matter what? Let us be clear. To be combative because someone challenges your own influences or power, that's not strength, that's foolish. I remember, for example, in my life, times when I'm defending myself and my views, even for the sake of breaking relationships, well, because I was told that was strength. That's foolish. Or to deny welcome or inviting someone because they threaten your wealth and your power and your identity, that's biblical foolish. Think about it. If one is combative, if they are all about being right, what that essentially means is they're willing to lift themselves up before they lift up others. Or as Psalm 14:1 says, true fools ignore God. And why do they ignore God? Well, why do you need God if you're always right? Nabal has it all figured out. He's wealthy, he's prestigious, and maybe even his foolishness contributed to his wealth. Luke chapter 12, verse 1 shares a parable about a foolish rich man that stores his treasure. And at the end of the passage, it says this. It says, those who store riches for themselves are not rich with God. So here's David. And David has just been denied by a foolish person. And so David, of course, thinks this is unfair. Look, Nabal treated me poorly. I'm the good Samaritan. I've done all this work. I've been around the countryside helping others and doing good for others, all this type of things. I mean, I'm the Robin Hood, right? I mean, to be fair to him, we've been there. How many of you have ever done right for others and served others, given up yourself for others, done so much for others, and yet the others do not pay you in return? Oh, isn't that just so frustrating? Especially when you're a Christian and you're doing so much good for the world and for others around you, and it's not paid in return. Right? So I get it, David. I get it. So what does David want to do? He wants to kill him. I'm done with it. But the question we have to ask ourselves is, if you killed Nabal, is that a wise act or a foolish one? Foolish Nabal highly offended the next king of Israel, David. I mean, how would other kings respond to this type of offense? What do you think Scripture says? He is already running for his life from other enemies. So now what are the enemies going to think if David lets Nabal get away with this? It's going to be seen as weak, right? And so as David is sharpening his swords and as mounting their horses, there's this little dust in the horizon. Who is that? Is that a woman I see? What is she doing? And there is something beautiful and wise about her. Lady Wisdom in Proverbs 9 says this: "Wisdom has built her house. She has set up its 7 pillars. She has prepared her meat and mixed her wine. She has set her table. She has sent out her servants, and she has called from the highest point of the city. Let all who are simple come to my house. Come eat my food and drink the wine I have mixed. Leave your simple ways and you will live. Walk in the way of insight, in the way of wisdom." And so here comes Abigail, and guess what? As Proverbs depicts, how does she meet David on the road? If you read the text, she brings with her bread, wine, and lots of good food. She is the image of wisdom, compassion, and welcome. She goes out and meets her husband's enemy, breaks bread and shares cup with him, and gives him the feast that her own husband denied him. See, where foolishness like Nabal invites you to raise yourself up, godly wisdom, like Abigail, calls you to lower yourself, to get on your knees, and to plead even for the health of someone as foolish as Nabal. That doesn't sound very strong, does it? To get on your knees and ask to forgive someone who's been foolish? Philippians 2 says this: in your relationships, you got to have the mindset of Christ, who being God did not consider equality something to be used for gain or advantage, but instead Christ made himself nothing. He got on his knees. He became a servant. You see, godly wisdom calls you to meet people where they are and to get on all fours and to serve them. This is the type of way of life that embodies Christ. To deny them bread, to deny them cup, to deny them welcome, that's just foolish. And so this morning, I can't help but think of mothering and the tough work it takes. How many meals have you prepared? How many hours? How much bread have you cut? Drinks you've poured? How many ingredients did you forget and had to run back to the grocery store or get your husband to? How many times have you been on your knees to tie a shoe or to put a Band-Aid on or maybe to pray for your child at night? It's tough work. And it's often filled with scraped knees, tireless journeys, and the loss of resources, of your own resources, all for the sake of someone else. In many ways, this is why we honor Mother's Day. Because we want to thank all of those mothering types out there, to our moms and wives, to single moms, stepmoms, moms that have lost children, moms that are working full-time, moms that are teaching kids at home, coaches, teachers, mentors, friends, grandmothers. Godly wisdom calls you to get alongside of people, to be on all fours and be with people where they are in their lives, to seek them out in their wilderness, in their trial and in their struggle. Because friends, in the wilderness, you could either pick foolishness or wisdom, death or life, loss or victory, entanglement or imprisonment or freedom. And the mission of God's people is to go out and seek out those who are in those struggles and in those pains and meet them where they are and bear them good fruit and good bread and good wine and share with them the good news of Jesus Christ, to be on our hands and knees, to plead with them, to make the right choice. Even if that right choice seems so different from the world's, even if that right choice means to not fight, to lower yourself. We're thankful for the Abigails. We have a lot of Abigails in our church, do we not? A lot of them. A lot of them ready to get alongside of you and serve you. Why? Why are we blessed at this church to have so many that want to serve? Well, because of what Christ has done for us. What Christ has done for us. And that cross itself represents the road that Abigail was on. She had nothing to gain in meeting David. Nothing. In fact, she probably had a lot, including her life, to lose. This might not be a good sermon about submissiveness, right? Because she did not listen to her husband at all. But the power and the will and the service of God called her to something greater. To face foolishness and say, I serve you. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and give his life as a ransom for many. This morning I pray that you are blessed by the Abigails in your life that call you to a life where you might need to make the decision to get away from foolishness and to be blessed by wisdom. This morning, I pray on this Mother's Day that you find that nurturing person in your life that will give you and extend to you acts of mercy and service and to bless you in ways that you need to be blessed. Like I said, Jesus Christ himself is the embodiment of that service.